Brad Smith, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time back here in Seattle. I know you've been on a whirlwind trip. So
it's great to be back in Seattle.
Yeah, no, I'll bet. The title of the book, Tools and Weapons, just curious, what does that even mean?
Well, it really refers to the fact that digital technology today has become both an incredibly powerful tool. It's helping us in all aspects of our lives, but it is also a weapon. We see governments using it in cyber attacks. We see concerns about software as a threat to privacy, a change in the economy, an impact on our jobs. At the end of the day, any tool can be a weapon. A broom can be used to sweep a floor or hit somebody over the head. The more powerful the tool, the more formidable the weapon.
In the book, you lay it out very clearly, chapter by chapter, these ideas about what you just said. And Microsoft has been involved with artificial intelligence. That's also something you write a lot about in the book. We hear so much about it becoming evil, taking over humans, taking over all of our jobs. Is that something we should really be worried about?
Well, I think artificial intelligence or AI will improve our lives, but it will change so much around us. And in a sense, one of the reasons that Carol Ann Brown, my co-author, and I wrote this book was to level the playing field, to make this information more accessible, to help people appreciate where AI is going, how it's going to impact our jobs, what it will mean for our kids and the skills they'll need to get a job. I think there are things that we should be excited about and things that we should worry about, but at the end of the day, information is power. I think understanding where things are going helps equip us to deal with it.
So what should we be worried about then when it comes, in your opinion, when it comes to artificial intelligence? What worries you?
I think that there are two questions that everybody should be thinking about. The first is, what kind of jobs will there be for ourselves and our children? And so we try to help people see where that is going. The other is whether we're creating a future that we as humanity will continue to control. Just think, we've seen Terminator movies every decade since the 1980s.
True.
So all of us have experienced on the big screen or in some other place this image of humans creating machines that make decisions by themselves. That's what AI does. And then humanity losing control of technology. And we make an argument in the book for the need for humanity to move fast to manage this technology.
Do you see other jobs emerging because of that? When I think of artificial intelligence, I think of AI maybe doing data sorting and those kinds of things. Will there be other kinds of jobs that might result out of that, maybe in the arts or something like that?
Well, absolutely. And one of the interesting things about AI is there are certain jobs today that will go away. There are absolutely new jobs that will be created, and in many ways, I think almost all of our jobs will change. There will be new skills that we'll need, and one of our points is that at one level, you can think of this as something that will require more data science, computer science, but in a sense, AI is about connecting that with humanity, which means the social sciences, the liberal arts. So in a sense, the soft skills, the things that nurses and teachers, social workers bring to work every day, that will be more important for technology going forward than it has been in the past.
Right, because the technology will handle a lot of the heavy lifting, and then we'll have to interpret the data, right? It's kind of what you're saying.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things is that we will rely on computers to make more decisions, but we shouldn't let them make the decisions for us. That's one of our messages. And so it will take people who are trained with new ways to work with these systems to interpret the results.
When I do research for interviews like this, I often ask my wife, what would you ask? And I said, what worries you? And she said, what really bugs me is when I'm on Facebook or on Google and I look something up, then all of a sudden on Facebook there's an ad for it, and on Google there's an ad, and they're listening to me on Siri and Cortana. Should we be really worried about that? Are we already out of control?
Well, I think it's a great question, and it's an experience I think we all have. We share in our book the stories of consumer privacy, and to some degree where it will go in the future, it may even have more of that. But I think they are also the stories of people who are working to advance privacy protection And at the end of the day, that's what we're big advocates for. Stronger privacy protection here in the United States. In some way, there's been stronger privacy rules in Europe than in the US, and we think it's time for the US to catch up so that we do have more control over this.
How does that happen? Who does that? Because the government is pretty slow to act when it comes to the control, right?
One of the really interesting stories to us, at least, as Carolyn and I worked on this, is the story of the real estate developer in San Francisco who spent a lot of his own money to get on the ballot an initiative last year to expand privacy protection in California. And once he got the signatures, it basically led to legislative movement after years of gridlock. And that led to the most sweeping privacy law in the history of the United States, the California Consumer Privacy Act. I think what it shows is two things. One is that the government can be slow to act, but that the public actually wants action. And so when we have states, and Washington is one as well, where you can take something to the ballot, I think there's hope for that public desire for privacy to really start to advance.
If you're a person who values privacy, which I do, a lot of people do, my family does, what should we be doing, in your opinion, to ensure that it's private, to take action for ourselves? What do you recommend?
Well, one of the interesting things today is that more and more companies are providing dashboards, if you will, so you can go online and find out what information is being stored and used about you. So, if you're using a search engine, if you're using a social media service, look for the privacy settings, look for what information is there about you. In Europe, the law now requires that companies provide an easy way for consumers to access this information about themselves. So far, Microsoft has been the only company to extend to everyone else around the world the rights that Europeans have. But I think that's a sign of things to come, and I think that's a cause for optimism.
Do you think the Trump administration could be doing anything better right now to ensure our privacy and protect the whole thing from getting out of control?
Well, I think almost everybody in government could be doing more to protect our privacy. We would love to see the United States Congress move forward with a strong privacy law. I gave a speech in Washington, D.C. in 2005 for this on behalf of Microsoft, and obviously it had no impact whatsoever. It's 14 years later and it still hasn't passed. We're hoping that Washington State, our own legislature, will enact a strong privacy bill next January or February when the legislature next comes into session.
There's also the concerns about what's going on overseas. There are, hackers that are not in the United States that we have no control over, that we can't put regulations on, that we can't prosecute. Isn't that what we should be worried about too?
We absolutely should be worried about this. And in our book, we share the story of a man named Patrick Ward. He's English, sells ice cream for a prominent ice cream company. Was scheduled to go into heart surgery on the 12th of May, just 2 years ago. As he was literally about to be wheeled into the operating room, the entire hospital stopped working. A third of the hospitals across the United Kingdom were basically put out of action by a cyber attack that came from North Korea. And that's just one of the stories we share about the nature of these attacks. And one of the things we really hope to do is help people see just how widespread and serious this has become, and that there is a path forward. We share the stories of not just what Microsoft, but other companies and governments are doing to protect against these cyber attacks. But it is an issue of fundamental public importance.
Also in the book, you talk about rural broadband. And specifically Ferry County in Washington State, your home state. I'm curious what it is about Ferry County and rural broadband that interests you so much.
We went to Ferry County in eastern Washington because every month it's the county in Washington State that has the highest unemployment rate. And in the winter, it often has an unemployment rate above 15 or 16%. And we went there in part because the Federal Communications Commission says that everyone in Ferry County has broadband, and yet we knew that wasn't the case. So we wanted to meet with people, and we share the story of sitting down at the Knotty Pine Diner in Republic, Washington, and talking to the mayor, talking to other people in the community. The fundamental message that we share is our view that broadband has become the electricity of the 21st century. If we want to bring job growth, if we want to bring better education and healthcare to rural communities, we have to bring broadband. And we're not. We're not in Ferry County. We're not in other rural counties in this state. We're not in many, many rural communities across this country. And we share the stories of how a century ago, the United States did what it took to bring electricity to every corner of the country. It brought long-distance telephone service to every farm in America. And our basic call to action, if you will, is that we need to be as ambitious in the 21st century with broadband as we were a century ago with electricity.
On the other side of the spectrum, Western Washington, Seattle, this is a Silicon Valley 2.0 now. When you were started at Microsoft a quarter of a decade ago, things have changed a lot, obviously, since then here in Seattle. I'm curious, is this what you envisioned this area being back in 1993 when you started? This is a different world here now.
It's a different world. Obviously, Seattle is a different city. Western Washington is a different place. As somebody who grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, a small town, I've always felt so privileged to live here. It's, as we all know, just a remarkably amazing and beautiful place. But at the same time, one of the stories we share is the conversation that took place among a group of business leaders about a year ago. And we were talking about what Seattle needs, what Western Washington needs to continue to flourish. And that's when we started talking about the fact that it's starting to feel a little bit like San Francisco North, and not in an entirely positive way. You see all these big buildings being built, jobs coming in, people coming in, but the cost of housing is rising. The first responders, our teachers, many middle income and lower income people are being forced to move farther and farther away. And Seattle, as we point out in the book, has become one of the cities in the United States where people have the longest commutes. And that's a problem for the fabric of our communities.
Yes, so things have changed. I mean, did you see this coming all those years ago? Microsoft is the root reason for so much recruitment and so many big businesses here now, it feels like.
Yeah, I think that we at Microsoft saw some things coming. I don't know that anyone saw the explosion in construction and the increase in people that we've all experienced in the last few years. And there's all these wonderful things that come with such a diverse and cosmopolitan city. But I think the real message is you have to manage growth, and you have to do it in a way that creates opportunity for everyone. In a sense, we see this mirror image. You see rural America, where people are being left behind in part because they don't have access to technology. You see urban America, where people have access to technology, but the increase in prices, especially for housing, is nonetheless causing some people to be left behind. And so you have concerns about inequality, about income inequality in both rural and urban areas, even though sometimes the politics of rural and urban America are so different. But it's all in many ways being fueled by technology, which is why we think it's important to put more understanding of what technology is doing into the equation.
Should I be worried, Brad, that there is some virtual profile of me being built by all the things I'm doing online, that somewhere someone is storing my private data and I'll never be able to get it back? Is the ship sailed on all that?
I don't think that things have gone beyond the point of no return. But we do live in a world where more data is being stored about ourselves every day. And I think it should cause people to ask about what services are like, what kind of business models companies have, what they're doing with data, how they're using it for advertising, if that's what they're doing. But I think more than anything else, it's a time when we should use knowledge and take control. And the way we often take control is not just in our own personal lives and the services we use, but in our voices and what we ask the political leaders of our day to do. There's a lot to be done. That's our message.
Brad Smith, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.